My name's Lauren. I'm now doing my part 3. I did my undergraduate and my master's at University of Nottingham. I'm now at MCA just up the road. And this is my 6th year thesis project on rethinking live work, also called Crocus Yard. So I'm not going to read all this out, but basically the whole thing that I was looking at is after COVID, there was a whole movement in looking at how we can sort of live and work, and that, we all know the hybrid model exists now, so that's what this thesis is all about. I did loads of research through my thesis, but I'm not going to sort of go into detail about that. The scheme also focuses on how we can empower females. That after COVID, there was something called a She Session, where less women went back to work than men. And also we know that women tend to have a gap in their careers, which sort of inhibits, development later on. So this is recognising how we can sort of focus on helping women and their families. So the thesis in general looked at the typology of lived work through historic and modern examples. This was just a few models that I did, and then I looked at sort of the larger complexes, and then down to individual domestic households, right from the layout on the master plans right through to sort of materials, texture, tone, all of that sort of thing, to really look at the different scales. A key part of my research that really fed through to sort of the design later on was looking at things like the courtyard typology. So although this is Ruddington's Knitters development near Nottingham, looking at how, although the layout was really efficient for the masters to look at their workers, it was also there were a lot of sort of transparencies, a lot of thresholds, a lot of visibility between where you live and your work. I then started comparing the UK with Japan. So these are the machayas in Japan, where people convert their homes into shop fronts, and people come and enjoy sort of communal rituals out the front of their houses. And then one of the things I really wanted to show you was my look at my research into Turn End. So this is Peter Aldington's house down in Buckinghamshire, I think. And the thing that I really enjoyed looking at was how, again, it's set up on the courtyard typology, but looking at how the materials, colours, tones, how that sort of guides you through the building, how it creates horizontal connections, vertical connections. So these here are physical models, about sort of 70 centimetres long. It would fit on this table. Huge amount of work went into it, but I hope you can see that this is looking how sort of the warmth of materials and the use of sort of more humble materials can really sort of make a space feel like home, really. So to the proposal, I'm not going to bore you with site analysis. It's set in the urban fringe of Nottingham by Arkwright Street, and then this is the tram coming down. So it's on a little patch of vacant land right at the moment. And the idea was to sort of repair this urban fringe. Instead of encouraging families to go live in the suburbs, it's encouraging them to come and be in the centre. Design strategy, again, live work. The whole a conclusion of my thesis was not that we have live work at the same place, but not that we have them far apart, that we have a live near typology, which is something that I would really enjoy. I don't know many developments that do this, so I thought that was why interesting of how I could do that as my thesis. This is the ground floor. So so north of the plan, at the top is the city centre, and the bottom here is the suburbs of the Meadows. And what I wanted to do is create an urban block that sort of had links with the sort of city centre, and then cascade that down towards the south, where it's more suburban feeling, terraced semi-detached houses. So the sort of development was a mixture of different types of live topologies. It's similar as you go up. There were spaces in the ground floor for things like breastfeeding spaces that a lot of developments wouldn't think about. So again, thinking of those spaces to try and tailor it towards helping women. And then looking at the general design strategy, so something I really liked about the courtyard typology was that in those historic case studies that I looked at, there was often a harder shell which was more protective on the outside of a development, and then as you come into the inside of the development, you're a bit more vulnerable. You can open up. There are a lot more openings, connections with people, connections between houses. So that is what I was really aiming for. So this is obviously showing you the sort of the more rigid side. The rigid outside of the development. And then looking at landscape and biodiversity and how it can link to the overall master plan. So not only creating a development, but also looking at how you can incorporate a green landscape strip that helps and aids the development of mending that fracture between sort of the the city centre and the suburbs. So by taking out a road that is not really used much, that Arkwright Street there that's a green strip, it's used as a cut through for vans and things like that. I went to site quite a few times, that's all I ever saw. So completely transforming that, getting rid of all the concrete tarmac, everything that's there, and creating a sort of a really embedded, integrated green strip for pedestrians and cyclists. And then proposed design, again, this should just show you you can see the sort of the harsher blacker lines around the outside, and how the structure breaks up on the inside of the courtyard, and how it becomes much more connected between each part of the development. And then the small images on the right you can see here, they are just links back to my thesis, which was a really good way to present my project about how the research fed into the actual design. Then going into the semi-detached houses, so these are, I think they're three-bed, six-person houses, so it's two houses connected with that narrow shared space. So this shared space could be, I'm going to show you a section later on, this shared space is the idea, for kids to do homework, to have dinner parties, all those things that you might want to do with someone else, but you'd have to go out your way to find a club or something. Instead, there is a sort of a more intimate space where you can do that with your neighbour. Again, having a small pocket study at the top that looks over this space. That space in the centre is a double height space. So if you're on the top floor in one house, you could in theory see down into that space. Well, you can see down into that space. That's how it's designed. And that was the pocket study with a few arrows of sliding doors in the middle on each side. The whole idea that it was a pocket study is because in that larger development to the north of the site, that's where you're encouraged to work. But obviously flexibility nowadays, we love having somewhere at home where we can at least, do something that we don't want to do in the office, say. Again, looking back at, I'm okay for time, looking back at materials, so I love projects where the tiles and the flooring changes depending on threshold and use. So this is what I was trying to do. This is what I was trying to do here. You might not be able to see, it might be a bit faint, but the two houses, the threshold between them indicating the boundary is simply done through the floor design, the courtyard design. So the floor tiles are different between each one, rather than putting up a physical fence or hedge, trying to keep sort of a physical connection between neighbours. Again, this shows that double height space in the middle. The whole idea is trying to get communities built, and I think a small space like this achieves that. So in that larger development that's at the north of the site, there were also smaller one-bed apartments and two-bed apartments. Something that I really enjoyed was manipulating the facade to include almost like small mini warm green rooms where people could have their plants. They could be outside or inside or part and part if they wanted, depending on which sort of partitions they opened. That was research that was reflected from the research of the Japanese Machaya, where they have large sliding doors between rooms. And then this is it's the sort of the wow images now, so we're nearly there. So again, the city centre is up that end, the suburbs are at this end. You can see how the massing sort of translate and uses the same forms and the same sort of size massing that you would see from a city going through to the suburbs. And then this is cross-section through where the tram line goes. So the development had, through that large urban block at the top, it was punched with a sort of a U shape, so it had a punch in the middle. And then looking back at those semi-detached houses, how we can incorporate sustainable strategies. So this just shows some things like the green roofs, photovoltaics, being able to personalize your own garden, not necessarily state sustainability, but gives you a sense of ownership. And I thought that was a sort of nice way to include that. Having balconies that look over the central courtyard space. Again, with sustainability, immediately I did not want to do steel, didn't want to do concrete. So this is a hybrid timber structure, glulam and CLT. And then throughout the design process, I was also trying to avoid things like adhesives, which obviously with glulam, things like that you can't really do. But in other methods, I was trying to use strategies that did that. Elevation, again, showing you the massing it travels down. and this is the approach from the city centre, looking at that urban block down towards the suburbs. And then looking at the facade, I always find the facade's the hardest thing, but I sort of went for quite a, I don't know, humble, subtle brick look. I didn't want to do anything too bold. So this is ways how you could personalise your own home and sort of, potentially choose how the sort of tiles are set out and what colour number plate you have. Those things that like really make you feel like your home is your home. Again, this just shows you how sort of the whole system, instead of using brick slips, I use mathematical tiles, which is, I think it's still used occasionally now, but it's effectively what looks like a brick slip system, but avoids adhesives, and there are less components to it. So yeah, I enjoyed looking at how that. So I won't zoom into the technical details, but it was fun to detail because never heard of them before. And then just for the wow images at the end, so this is the sort of public square on the approach from the train station. This is what you would see as you move down sort of between the tram and the development. The aim was to sort of, the aim was for people that live there to be able to look down into the public square that the development's been around, to encourage cyclists, all those things that you'd want from a urban space. This is that central courtyard, so rather than being that sort of rigid exterior, this is where it's all broken up. People have their own gardens. Again, all those things that sort of you would love to have in your own house, maybe in the suburbs, but this is bringing it back to the city centre. And then this is one of the co-working spaces, which I didn't mention. There are co-working spaces in that main block at the top for people to do more flexible work, be able to bounce ideas off each other who are in different industries, and past those through each of these sort of brick piers are their own individual studio spaces. And I hope here the reference to turn and the models that I did for my thesis research, again, looking at how I can use the warmer sort of materials and sort of more humble materials to create sort of a verticality in the space, bring a real presence to the space. That was the idea for this. And then final 2 pages. So I love doing the modelling, the physical modelling, even though it did take about 50 or 60 hours to do each one. This is that shared space between the semi-detached houses. So this is as if you're standing on the ground floor at one of the semi-detached houses looking through that space to another. You can see your neighbour's kitchen table through there. And this is the idea, that a party's just gone on, the kids have just made a mess or whatever, or you've got your own little book reading corner. And again, looking at how I can use those sort of warmer timber materials, sort of really inviting, really homely, to create that connection between the inside and the outside. And then, this is the last slide. So finally, this was a model that I did to try and encapsulate a whole load of different things, such as material, the arrangement of materials. You can see the brick bond changes, how someone can personalize their space, the tiling, the timber in there, everything. I was trying to encapsulate all those things in these 2 images. And I think overall, obviously, I think if I was to go back to it, there are things that I would change, but I think overall as a project, it stands for sort of something that I really believe in. I think flexible working, supporting women, and yeah, I was really proud of this project. I was very lucky. I won the University of Nottingham's Housing Award as well when I graduated, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Hope it's inspired.
Yes, thanks very much for that, Lauren. That was excellent. So we'll open it briefly up to the panel now for any questions. You should have all accessible to mics adjacent to you, which should all be on now. And we also have Paul, who's wandering around with his own mic, should anyone in the audience have a question in a moment. But is there anyone on the panel that wants to make us start? Tom?
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. Thanks for that. I thought what I really liked about it is the way it evoked its place, and you clearly sort of like imbibed the context at a very sort of deep level. So yeah, I thought a lot of the aspects of it, like the tone and these kinds of things, resonate with that part of the city really, really strongly. I was interested to know, and it might be that you've remained just agnostic to this, but were you sort of interested in the governance structures that might enable this kind of quite innovative way of living together? Something you looked at, like community land trust or like housing cooperatives or these sorts of things. And yeah, it might, as I say, it might be something you remained agnostic to, because there are sort of different models, I suppose, that could work. But yeah, that's just a question that was kind of coming up as you.
I think maybe not as in depth as that, but I forgot to say at the very start, this is a housing cooperative, and I think the thing that sort of inspired that is that when we had lectures at uni, we were told about the sort of I think German and Scandinavian models where they do that sort of thing more, or where there's like part ownership and all the members of the community, they're not paying for a whole house, for example, or a whole flat, but there's a contribution and then a contribution from I'm not sure who the other party would be, but not the tenants or the residents. But to be honest, I think that's more something that I've actually discussed more with people sort of in practice now, not related to this project, and friends. And I think definitely the UK's. I think maybe this is not quite related to the question, but I think maybe we're stuck in our ways where there's such a big desire to own a property, and it's across Europe. That's not the same. There's not that same view. Maybe somewhere, but I think there's definitely the sort of conversation to try and encourage people in England to not have to have this dream of owning their home and that be it, and they have their own garden, their own everything. So yeah, definitely interesting one. Definitely thought about it, but we'll think about it some more. Yeah, thank you.
Greta.
Yeah, so I just congratulations on a really nicely conceived project, and I really enjoyed looking at the reference to Frances Hollis. We did a competition with her when I was at a practical casting of architects, and it was live work obviously as well, and it was Salford Homes for Life, and we ended up second, so unfortunately it wasn't built, but it was a really good process. And community land trust might be a way as to configure this, because then it kind of takes out that speculation value of the home as an asset, rather than somewhere to live. And also looking back at projects that I've worked on that would live work, then because of land values, then people seek to capture the value by reducing the sizes and selling on or renting out. So that would be a way to kind of keep it for perpetuity. Good, but yeah, really good, really nice project. And the other one I'd just like to say was I enjoyed those two the pocket studies that overlook each other, and I was thinking, as a sort of ADHD person myself, it's quite a good thing to sit and work, overlooking someone else who's also working.
Didn't even know that. There you go.
Because there's something called there's different ways of calling it, I guess, but if you can actually log on and work with someone on Zoom.
Yeah.
Just to allow you to concentrate.
Yeah, sure,
Whereas if you're looking over your neighbour, maybe that will keep you in check.
Yeah. No, that's good to know. Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else? Paul?
Hello? Okay,
Let's
there
go
we
to Joe.
Right, we've got a question over
Jason
here
at the back.
from Joe. Here you go, Joe. Jason, sorry, Jesus.
Hi, Lauren. Thanks very much for that. That was fantastic. I particularly enjoyed your energy for presenting. Fantastic. So keep that up. How do you move on from this? How do you transition from the body of work that you've obviously spent a lot of time collating and integrate that into your practice and keep on improving from that? I've just wondered how you're going to try and maintain that.
I think in terms of into practice I'm working at, not sure. But in terms of my personal life, I don't know if some people know here, I sort of have two careers sort of going on at the same time, and I think there's a lot of overlap with things like sustainability and live work and exploring those topics. And I think the thing that I am really not adamant, but I don't know, passionate for. I think the thing that I'm really passionate for is that hybrid working is clearly something that works, and community living and engagement clearly helps places improve. And I think don't want to offend anyone here, but I think some people that maybe want to opt for come back 5 days in the working week, you know, in the office, all that. I think from my perspective, I think I know the excuse might be, you know, that before COVID we did that, we can do that again. But I think from my perspective, it's that, like, it has changed. It doesn't matter how it's changed, like, we're here now. And it might have just been that COVID sort of, you know, was a catalyst for that, and that it would happen in 20 years anyway. So I think the thing that I sort of, you know, I'm engaging in, like, in my own self is that currently I'm working full-time in architecture and then doing my other sort of job on the side. And I think I'd be really interested just in, like, my personal life in, like, 10, 20 years, how maybe places and communities like that could benefit, like, me. You know, I'm a woman, I'm hoping to have a family, so, you know, the issues that I'm sort of tackling will affect me, just not quite yet. So, yeah, I think maybe there's some old views, not old, there are some views that I just don't agree with, and I think it's the conversations that I have these conversations with people in the office, so I guess that's how I'm bringing it into my practice, just through conversation. And then in terms of architectural design, we'll see where I am in a few years, see if I can tell you about design that I've, you know, miraculously made that's now on site or something. But yeah, thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you. We got a question here from Pavlos. Pavlos, maybe you'll introduce yourself before asking your question.
Hello everyone, I'm Pavlos, I'm a councillor in Nottingham City Council, and I'm also a planning committee member. So from my perspective, I mean, I was in planning committee when I saw an application on this particular site with the title of Crocus Place.
Right.
Yes, so it was really illuminating to actually see this again in such a new kind of format from the one that I've seen. So if you're not aware, obviously the application that went through that site and was approved by planning committee a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, it was an office block similar to the Unity Square one. So now I see this and it looks so much better, to be quite frank. So yes, the massing is different. It matches much better with the buildings around it. And I do remember on planning committee, this was one of the issues that was raised by planning committee members, how it's so big and how it doesn't really, you know, relate well with its surroundings. So that's really good. So yeah, I mean, you have a very strong communal area there, recreation areas for people to meet, and this is really important to encourage interaction. And you're maximizing the social outcomes, really. So very strong kind of proposal there.
Thank you.
Just to share that the land is actually owned by the council, so you know you'd have to do some pretty good convincing in terms of getting something.
Nice, good.
So yeah, have you managed to actually see that application? That was my question. Have you managed to research that?
I think I know which one you're on about. Right, is it right up by the train station?
That's the one. Yeah.
Yes, I did see that,
Yeah,
and I thought I'd propose something different. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Josh?
Thank you again, Lauren.